Tonight, I want to talk to you about the chocolate trail that led to love. Back in the day, when I was a kid growing up in the 50s in Mitchell, Indiana, a small town of 3,500, every Friday night was reserved for Mom's shopping trips to the big city of Bedford, 18,500. And my daddy would often take me to the Hook's drugstore for a lemon Coke. But if my sister, who was older, if she stayed with us, then he would frequently take us to one of 3 chocolatier shops over on the other side of the square. Now, these chocolatier shops were there partly because of the limestone industry, which was booming at that time. They had imported a number of Italian artisans to do the stone carving, and along with the artisans came some wonderful recipes for hand-dipped chocolates. So we had these beautiful European chocolates in these chocolate shops. They were all pretty much the same. You went in the door, and on the right were these extremely large, beautiful glass cases that had today's chocolates that had just been made. And on the left side would be a luncheonette counter with the 6 or 8 stools and the blue or red naugahyde top stools. And in the back would be the booths. Well, we just stopped at the chocolate cases, and we got to pick out a few. And chocolate was expensive then, just like now. But my sister and I would take our time, and we would get our chocolates, and we would exit the store with our little white bags and be very happy about it. So those stores were there for quite a long time. Now, my love of chocolate, to go back a little bit, started, I think, when my grandfather brought home these extremely large 10-pound size red boxes of chocolates once a year or so around Christmas time. And I was about 4 years old when I remember developing my sense of taste and smell, and I just sort of really fell for chocolate. I learned pretty fast how to pinch the bottom of the chocolate to see what was in the center so that I could get to the caramel. And I got in a lot of trouble for that, but I kept at it. So I really loved chocolate from a very early age, and little did I know the significance that this would play later in my life. I just had no idea where this was going to lead. Now, these chocolate shops in Bedford closed about the 60s, but luckily we had Mr. Hoover, who retired and bought some recipes, and he carried on the tradition until I left Bedford when I divorced, and I moved to Carmel with my 2 little kids. And sadly, there were no chocolate shops for a long time. Finally, Fannie Mae opened up. So every Monday I would get teased endlessly by my staff at the time because I would travel up to Fannie Mae on Monday afternoons, and I would buy my week's supply of dark chocolate caramels, 7 of them, 1 for each night, just like, you know, at the hotel you get a chocolate on the pillow. And I think secretly, you know, they teased me a lot about it, but I think secretly they were just kind of jealous of my willpower. See, it's my willpower getting to me already. Well, anyway, so I just loved chocolate, and I kept at it. And eventually, a man came into my life that I thought was pretty odd. In fact, I wasn't sure he wasn't crazy. The first thing he would do when he landed inside the door someplace was he would search around till he found a telephone, and he would grab it, and then he would look at whoever's telephone it was, and he would say, "Is this okay?" And then he'd start dialing and calling and, you know, long distance and discussing business and stuff. He was pretty addicted to telephone. And I thought, wow, that's amazing. And there is a reason that Charles Schulz drew Charlie Brown the way he did. There are people who actually do move through life the way Charlie Brown did. Rob was always in a hurry. Robert Louis Pettiner, in a hurry to get through life. He would come in that door, nose first, leaning into the wind, and the feet, you know, whirring underneath. He never stopped. He never sat still. He had the energy of 10 people. I've only met one other person I thought was even comparable, and that was Mitt Romney's dad, George, who was running for president one time. I never have met anybody quite like him. Oh, Rob, is that you? Anyway, I've never met anybody quite like him because he was just brilliant. He was energetic. He did the work of 10 people in one day. He was a super salesman, had real loyalty from his clientele. If you have driven across any road or bridge or highway in this state and passed several buildings like the Hyatt Regency downtown, in his 55-year career, Robert Louis Pettiner was the surety bondsman. So he had a grand attachment to this state and drove about 35,000 miles a year through it. But anyway, he was brilliant, and he was a person of great humor. He loved practical jokes. One of his other passions was travel. So we went a lot of places once we married. He did propose several times, and I did not want to marry him. The reason I didn't want to marry him is because I didn't think it was fair. He was, you see, he was quite a bit older, 23 years. And he had already raised his family and was at that stage in life where you go off and you do fun things. I had 2 little kids in elementary school to raise. That was okay by him. He finally convinced me, being the super salesman that he was, so we married, and his passion for travel I found out rather quickly, and we went a lot of places. Well, guess what I did when I got to these places? I went and looked for the chocolate shops. And amongst my favorites were a little tiny place around the corner down the hall from the Palm Court in the Plaza Hotel in New York City. There was this really cute tiny shop, and they had really good chocolates. And on top of that, they had the most unique boxes I ever saw. They had these cube boxes about 3.5 inches, and they were covered in colorful crepe paper and made up to look like animals. They had a foam head, and they were like squirrels and lions and tigers and stuff. And I still have a couple of those I brought home to my kids. And we went to the Ghirardelli factory on the wharf in San Francisco. My other favorite California company is See's. I had to quit ordering from them because we had an incident one time. I sent Valentine hearts to my kids, Jesse in St. Paul and Joel in Boston. And Joel's condominium, the outside door was open, the inside door was locked, and in between this vestibule was the postal boxes, and the postman would just put packages on the floor. Well, I called Joel's wife and I said, "How'd you like the Valentine heart this year?" And she said, "We didn't get it." I think I know what happened. See's has a reputation for not putting preservatives in their candy, and they smell so wonderful when you open that lid up. And I think somebody smelled that candy through the wrapper and they snatched it. So that was the end of the Valentine hearts. But and we made it over to Hershey's one time and actually saw how they make chocolate from the cocoa beans on. Little did I know the significance of all this chocolate, what it would lead to someday. So at home, I have been over to Lebanon, Indiana, where they were making truffles for one of the famous hotel chains, and they were good. I thought I could have made them kind of myself. The ones I would never be able to duplicate are the Guerlains, the beautiful Guerlains in Richmond. And you know, I have tried a little dipping myself. Not skinny dipping, Tom, chocolate. Chocolate dipping. I tried to make caramel stars one time because I'm surrounded by stars and caramel. You know, we have a lot of high achievers there. And I thought this would be neat, but I couldn't get the centers just right. And Mr. Hoover had told me one time it's the centers are the real key to a hand-dipped chocolate. I probably never would even come close along the chocolate line of duplicating Schaefer's wonderful chocolate fondue or the Dairy Queen hot fudge. But I did have a big hit one time with fresh raspberries clusters that were had dark chocolate poured over them. My niece liked that so well that she invited me to make the groom's cake for her wedding, for her husband. And I said, sure. I'd made a lot of groom's cakes for my family, and I said, sure. So you take these, I decided to do a cabbage. And it has to be chocolate because it's a groom's cake. And you take a couple of half-sphere balls, pans, and you make these chocolate halves. You stick them together and make a round cake, a ball of a cake. and you stick it together with this heavy-duty frosting, and you put that all over the outside. In the meantime, you have taken the fresh leaves of a beautiful big cabbage, and you have smeared chocolate all over those leaves and let it set up, and then you peel the cabbage leaf off of the chocolate leaf, and there you are. You've got your chocolate leaf. You stick that around into this cake, and you form a cabbage. Big hit. And I was so proud because I had to haul it all the way to the other side of Cincinnati in the middle of summer. But it made it. So that probably was my most stunning deal with the chocolate. Well, I'm going to tell you about the chocolate that really struck home with me as being the best in the world. I think we were in Boca Raton, and that was the first time I laid eyes on the beautiful copper boxes that say Godiva. I just fell in love with the whole situation. I still love the lion-hearted caramels, by the way. My dear sweet husband, this brilliant, very busy businessman who just was so good at everything, he was also very kind and very thoughtful and had a very good heart. And that was why I finally married him. He became my real husband and my kid's real dad. This man was so thoughtful, and every single Valentine's after that, which was our engagement anniversary, he always gave me a box of Godiva chocolates. He's been gone a long time now. Right after he left, passed away, I asked a friend one day, I said, I don't understand something. And she said, what? I said, every time we met someone new, somebody would come over to me and grab me by the elbow and look me straight in the face, very serious, and say, you know, he adores you. And I would be so puzzled by this because guess what? I already knew that. And I adored him. I just couldn't figure that out. And in the 23 years we were married, I would say that at least 200 times I had people use that word adore. And I asked Marianne one day, I said, why did they always say adore? And he said, because that is the first thing he always said to people when he met them. He would always look over at you and he would say, you know, I adore that lady. Well, today, every time someone, my family or friends, gives me a beautiful copper box of Godiva chocolates, my memory of my late husband is forever intertwined with that chocolate box. And I will always think of him the rest of my days forevermore, of the man who adored me when I see a Godiva chocolate box. Thank you.